Food's been a vital part of video gaming since Pac-Man gobbled cherries for bonus points. But only a few brave programmers have had the drive or the hunger to dedicate an entire title to eating. In 1982's Burger Time, Peter Pepper is a man on a mission. To satisfy your culinary desires, the fearless chef will climb ladders, stride across giant ingredients, and attack walking hot dogs with pepper. Squash enemy foodstuffs inside hamburgers for extra points. And people say those old games make no sense. If only they made a sequel, Hot Chip Time. A more realistic title hit shelves a year later in the delicious form of Atari's Pressure Cooker. You're still a hamburger chef, but this time you're in a strange kitchen where ingredients fly out of tubes and buns come down a conveyor belt. If you put condiments on in the wrong order or drop the finished burgers down the wrong chute, you're docked performance points. It was excellent training for the relentless pace of peak hour service industry work. Next up is Mick and Mac Global Gladiators, a Mega Drive game you probably spent months playing back in 1992, wishing you owned Sonic. Heroic teenager Mick, or if he's off sick, his buddy Mac, leaps around grotty green platforms, firing cleansing goop at evil spitting blobs and smashing machines custom designed to generate slime. What's this subtle ecological metaphor got to do with food, you ask? In addition to saving the world, the fellas have to collect magical golden arches, or a flag-waving clown won't let them move on to the next level. No prizes for guessing who financed Mick and Mac.
Awesome!
In 2006, the Cooking Mama juggernaut kicked off with a feast of gameplay. Well, a late afternoon snack of gameplay. Oh, that's gross. Pickles. Part minigame collection and part starry-eyed Japanese kitchen insanity, Cooking Mama dared to ask the question, why whip up a real-life pork curry when you can just do it on your DS? Like a galley slave, you follow Mama's orders as the clock ticks. After every step, the meal-making matron gives you a rating from Mama will fix it to better than Mama. By the time you get to the end, you'll be too stuffed to make dinner. Finally, a full-bellied salute to those characters who, like us, need food to do stuff. But while we have to save up our cash and call the pizza dude if we want to eat, our video game compadres can get a meal in a brick, out of the sky, on the ground in ghost-filled dungeons, inconveniently placed crates, in the middle of the road, from a friendly mage, or even in the garbage. Tasty.
For some gamers, it's all about compelling narrative, pretty graphics, or realistic blood splatter. For the rest of us, there's only one reason to struggle through hours and hours of gameplay: boss fights. It's a topic we could spend the next 40 episodes covering, but we've only got a few minutes, so if we don't mention your favorite boss, feel free to boo the TV. Arcade bosses date back to the mothership from 1980's Phoenix, which appeared at every 5 levels to threaten your fighter. To bring it down, you had to shoot through the hull to kill the alien pilot inside. But it took Shigeru Miyamoto to get us addicted to the idea of boss fights with 2 classic titles. Mario had his start against a giant ape, but he truly entered our hearts when he heroically leapt a fire-breathing, princess-napping monster and saved the day. Bowser was a worthy opponent, but he taught us a valuable lesson: turtles can't fly. Meanwhile, in an alternative universe, a young'un named Link triumphed over another princess napper. But unlike Bowser, invisible pigman Ganon could only be defeated by a silver arrow. The best villains are ones you have some attachment to, the ones you really, truly want to see go down. By 1992, developers were upping the emotional ante. And if you're going to spend 60 missions escaping from a Nazi prison, who better to battle on the way out than Adolf Hitler himself? Mecha Führer, that's who. In Wolfenstein 3D, Hitler releases volley after volley of bullets from 4 chain guns until you destroy his robo-suit, then keeps coming at you with a measly 2 chain guns. While BJ Blazkowicz fought Nazis in Europe, another game was taking arcades by storm. We're talking about Mortal Kombat, and the head honcho everyone loved to hate was actually a sub-boss. The main villain of the piece was geriatric Shang Tsung, but he couldn't stack up to Goro, a four-armed, 2,000-year-old half-dragon who didn't take any lip from the likes of Scorpion. When Blizzard redefined RPGs with dark action titled Diablo, the very first quest in the game let you know what you were in for. The Butcher, a cleaver-wielding demon, is kicking back in a corpse-filled room when you bust in to avenge some innocent villagers' deaths. For a novice adventurer used to dealing with skeletons, it was a bit scary. Not heaps, but a bit.
Fresh meat. The spirits of the dead are now avenged.
No discussion of epic boss bashing is complete without a mention of Shadow of the Colossus, a game featuring nothing but bosses, 16 of them to be precise. Each one has a specific weakness, and it's up to you to find and exploit it. Fortunately, they tend to be marked by a big glowy spot reflected from your sword. Convenient, yeah? Then there's World of Warcraft, which has more big cheeses than you've had cheeseburgers. Starting with Null Chieftain Hogger, there's an evil overlord for every occasion. The thing with WoW is you usually can't go in and fight those bosses alone. Getting 40 players together to tackle an epic raid dungeon is a feat of organization, coordination, and skill.
To arms! It's the chicken dragon of Kalimdor!
But our vote for the strangest boss battle goes to 1986's Bubble Bubble. To kill a giant alcoholic named Superdrunk, you and your twin dinosaur brother have to drink magic potions that let you blow bubbles with lightning bolts in them. Then you sock him with 60 of those bolts while he hurls bottles at you. Someone at Taito obviously needed to work through some childhood issues. There you have it, 5 epic boss fights and a bonus weird one.
Good game!
Didn't see me coming, did you? Just think about what games like Batman Arkham Asylum, Splinter Cell, or Metal Gear Solid would be like if you remove the player's ability to sneak. It's inconceivable, right? And that's because stealth play has become a critical element to our games. In fact, stealth is even now a genre unto itself. But where did all this sneakiness begin? Hideo Kojima's original 8-bit Metal Gear for the MSX and NES is often credited as the first game to make avoiding conflict the aim. However, it was probably the original Castle Wolfenstein on the Apple II that originated the concept of evading entanglements. As a prisoner trying to escape a Nazi fortress, you had to navigate your way through rooms of patrolling guards armed only with a single pistol and your wits. Taking on the might of the Third Reich in a gunfight was definitely something that was best avoided. So the pressure was on to dodge patrols, pick locks to find useful gear, and even disguise yourself in Nazi uniform. Firing your pistol tended to attract a little too much unwanted attention. Not bad for a game that used only 4K of RAM, but back to Metal Gear. Solid Snake's debut mission to infiltrate Outer Heaven required the player to monitor the enemy's line of sight and exploit the blind spots. Snake could use a number of stealth-assisting items, including binoculars, to let you scout out a screen ahead, and the classic cardboard box made its debut as the ultimate in camouflage wear. All clear. It was Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation that took stealth into 3D. The series has, of course, gone from strength to strength, inventing new ways for the player to get around undetected and fool those easily distracted guards. While Snake can always fall back on an AK-47 when things go pear-shaped, there was one stealth-centric game that made getting caught up in combat something to be truly feared.
We've got an intruder right now, Thief! Quick! He's right over here!
Thief: The Dark Project on the PC is a classic example of masterful first-person stealth play, in which remaining hidden is your #1 priority.
I have a simple job planned for this evening. Break into a guarded mansion, steal another fat nobleman's priceless trinket, and leave quietly.
As the wily thief Garrett, you had to take into account the environmental light, keeping one eye on a light meter to track how visible you were as you slipped through the shadows. Noisy floor surfaces also came into play, forcing the player to be more observant of where they were treading and how fast they were moving.
Who's there? Is someone there?
If you were sloppy enough to be sprung, the guards would slice and dice you like sandwich ham, so the tension was, at times, excruciatingly good. Thief definitely helped to inspire a generation of stealth-tastic games, but hey, where would the genre be without ninjas? Tenchu Stealth Assassins was released for PlayStation around the same time as Thief hit the PC. Missions involved lightning-fast assassinations, grappling your way across the rooftops, and employing diversionary tactics such as smoke bombs. The aim was to complete objectives completely unseen for greater rewards. Tenchu did suffer from technical flaws, a horrible draw distance for one, but it definitely made great strides for stealth gaming on console. The point at which sneaky tactics really took a stranglehold on the mainstream was probably the debut of Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell in the early noughties. Third Echelon Sam Fisher had technology on his side when it came to covertly observing those around him to successfully execute his spy objectives. Once again, darkness was your ally. Fisher's night vision and thermal goggles made it easy to navigate through the blanket of blackness, so looking to manipulate the environment was key. As a good guy government agent, non-lethal takedowns were sometimes important, pressuring the player to think twice about resorting to messy machine gun fire. The art of avoidance has now well and truly made its mark on the gaming landscape, with stealth action offering players a genuine alternative to being a gun-toting buffhead.
Sometimes we need a break from real life to play games that simulate the things that we could be doing in real life. I think that makes sense.
I'm with you, Hex. We're talking about the nerdy appeal of the simulator, but let's not get confused with casual simulation games like Cities XL, SimCity, or Theme Park, because the simulator is the more hardcore end of the spectrum.
Right, flight simulators, for example.
They're a little too obvious for us, Hex. I want to know what the hell they were thinking when they came up with this. Crane Simulator 2009, a simulation of the thrilling pursuit of maneuvering massive machinery to lift rather large objects. Playing from a first and third-person perspective, your job is to lift and shift stuff into position within a tension-building time limit. Hours of white-knuckled pleasure.
Yes, but of course, not all simulators have to be as strange as that piece of shovelware. Space Shuttle, A Journey into Space, took us on a rocket ride into orbit, which was a surprisingly technical simulation for the old Atari 2600 and its faux wood paneling. The player had to pilot the space shuttle through launch, dock with satellites, and then successfully return to Earth without running out of precious fuel.
I'm not sure if carefully nudging the X-axis trajectories to make a few white pixels move across the screen really captures what it'd be like to have 1,000 tons of fuel igniting under your ass.
The Aussie-developed Train Simulator series from Auron Interactive has been puffing along now for about 8 years, giving gamers a taste of life on the tracks. Objectives include the safe transportation of cargo or passengers and getting to grips with all the levers and buttons that control the trains.
Designing and building your own maps and railroads does hold some appeal for anyone who grew up with the model train sets, but you'd still have to call this one a niche title, I think.
Well, instead of inhaling plumes of smoke from a steam engine, how about the salty sting of wind-whipped polygons?
I love a bit of wind-whipped polygon action.
Virtual Skipper has gone from single-player simulation to full online regattas between budding boat captains all over the globe. Realistic water conditions based on weather and water currents make this more than just simple spinnaker management.
Landlubbers probably wouldn't understand the appeal of battling the elements to haul your hull over the finish line, would they, Hex? I think a crossover with Jaws Unleashed could have helped.
Finally, let's take a look at what might be one of the most hardcore simulators around. Commander-in-Chief is a geopolitical simulator for the PC that hands you the control of an entire country, from its economic management and military considerations to ecological problems and other more microscopic social issues.
Missions with exciting titles like 2009, A Big Recession, give you an idea of the enormity of the problems you have to face as the leader of your country. Simply remaining in power is a challenge, let alone actually getting anything meaningful done, which is pretty realistic, I guess. As far as games go, though, I think that's the closest you'll come to a 9-to-5 job, Hex.
Well, the simulator is a pretty demanding genre, no matter whether you're piloting a 747 through crosswinds or moving a monster crane.
Monster cranes are cool, though. Yeah. After all those selfless quests to rescue princesses and save the Earth from utter annihilation, it was a breath of fresh air, or should we say an exhalation of some putrid gaseous substance, when games finally let us play the baddie.
We don't just mean making the most of arsehole physics or choosing the snarky response in a dialogue tree.
That sound makes me want to kill somebody.
We're talking about those games in which playing the villain is the be-all and end-all. One of the first games that let players indulge in their evil tendencies was the 1994 space combat sim Star Wars TIE Fighter for PC. As a rookie Imperial pilot executing the orders of Emperor Pruneface Palpatine, the player had to pilot a variety of TIE craft, engage in dogfights with rebel scum, lay traps for a calamari cruiser or two, and kowtow to shadowy superiors. Forget about any kind of path of redemption to the light side of the Force. TIE Fighter's story was so cleverly scripted that you actually sympathised with the Empire's efforts to cleanse the galaxy of idealistic troublemakers.
Those Rebel Alliance pansies had it coming to them. In 1997, Peter Molyneux's Dungeon Keeper gave gamers a chance to sit back and plot the demise of those annoying gold-thieving adventuring parties by constructing the deadliest dungeons imaginable. Much like Molyneux's later Black and White, the player interacted with the world using a disembodied hand, dragging and dropping imp sentries into action and slapping prisoners held captive in your torture chambers. Part real-time strategy, part world building, Dungeon Keeper's sinister sense of humour made hacking up heroes a guilt-free pleasure.
A spiritual successor of sorts to Dungeon Keeper was 2004's Evil Genius from the now defunct Elixir Studios. Continuing the theme of playing as a twisted mastermind holed up in an underground lair, the game's camp 60s spy setting paid tribute to classic Bond villains.
This was another strategic game of base building, the aim being to stop a series of sneaky secret agents from reaching the inner sanctum of your headquarters. Nothing a little torture couldn't fix. Evil Genius wasn't exactly the greatest game ever made, but it did give gamers a chance to cackle maniacally.
Yes, well, enough of this emotionally detached manipulation from on high badge. What about getting to unleash your fury firsthand?
Now you're talking.
Overlord put players in the pointy armoured getup of an undead overlord. With a sweep of an analogue stick, you could direct your cackling goblin horde to tear apart towns and ransack palaces with an occasional overhead slice from your very own Axe of Doom.
The recently released Overlord 2 follows in the same footsteps, letting you squander your mounds of treasure on vanity upgrades to your Netherworld fortress and generally enjoy the delights of wreaking havoc.
There actually aren't that many games that allow you to focus purely on getting your kicks from villainous actions, although the choice to be good or evil does seem to be pretty common in many character-driven games these days.
Even a game like The Sims 3 lets you explore the nasty side of human nature with evil character traits, while games like Fable, Infamous, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic all leave it up to you how morally corrupt you're willing to become.
D&D style RPGs have let players choose an evil alignment during character creation for years, though the resulting effect is sometimes only a matter of getting access to a different skill set instead of anything deeper or darker.
And with the arrival of Dragon Age Origins giving us the option to at least explore our hearts of darkness, we're reminded once again how sometimes it's good to be bad. Ow!
Okay, let's get this show on the road. As you know, we have syndicated the decision for next year's Paradigm Shift, also known as SIDNIPS. content-wise. We want you to take things to greater than or equal to the next level. I want you to think about the synergy, the energy in synergy. What does it mean? How can we achieve it? Why be such a noob?
Follow, follow! Quick sticks! This way, this way.
Badge, I think he was trying to tell us something. Look at all these old consoles.
Hang on a sec, Hex. That was no ordinary gaming spectre. That's the ghost of gaming past. I can feel a backwards compatible coming on. The Naughties couldn't have got off to a bigger, brighter and better start with the launch of the stupidly successful PlayStation 2 in 2000.
Sony PlayStation 2.
When we got our hands on games like Time Splitters, Burnout, Final Fantasy X and the magnificent Ico, the previous generation of blurry N64 games and clunky PS1 polygons were obliterated in an instant.
Sony's decision to switch from CD to DVD also made the PS2 more of a general home entertainment system. The DualShock controller evolved to include a set of fully analogue buttons to go with its sticks, though only 2 controller ports meant that gamers were still lumped with a multi-tap adapter should a 4-player session be on the cards. One very important bit of software made its debut on the PS2 and would go on to influence the industry in a profound way. With Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 3, the sandbox game was born. The PS2 still holds its own to this day. In fact, it only officially went on sale in Brazil last month. I know, weird.
After observing how Sony moulded the PlayStation brand to become synonymous with video gaming, Microsoft stepped up to the plate for their slice of the rapidly expanding games industry pie. The Xbox copped criticism on debut for being a PC squashed into a big black box with a controller like an oversized potato. But the weight of Microsoft's marketing very quickly moved the Xbox into the minds of the mainstream.
The Xbox scored a few console gaming firsts. It had an 8GB internal hard drive, making saves a cartridge-free process. And more importantly, it introduced an integrated online multiplayer service, humbly dubbed Live.
Xbox launch titles like Project Gotham Racing, Oddworld Munch's Odyssey, and Halo Combat Evolved matched Sony punch for punch when it came to visual wow factor. Even Nintendo, left stumbling after the cartridge-based N64, were willing to weigh in with a serious technology upgrade this time around.
Let me introduce you to our new baby. Like all babies, it is small, but it will make a lot of noise.
Codenamed the Dolphin while in development, the GameCube was, in some ways, typical Nintendo, stubbornly rejecting the popular DVD format for its own proprietary mini-optical discs and housing its hardware in a weird purple cube that wasn't even technically a cube. Here was Nintendo continuing to distance itself from the MTV generation hardcore that Sony and Microsoft coveted. And it had a handle!
Early GameCube releases like Luigi's Mansion, Super Monkey Ball and Star Wars Rogue Leader impressed, but the GameCube seemed destined to languish in third place.
The GameCube controller, while as ergonomic as a handful of butter, was probably Nintendo's wake-up call as to how confusing these complex controllers were starting to look to the average person on the street. To be a gamer now meant studying a complex diagram of controls every time you wanted to play a new game.
While the first few years of the decade heralded the beginning of an almighty console war, the PC was continuing a golden stretch of games, despite a minor hiccup in 2000 with the laughably suckish Daikatana from John Romero. Massive releases like Diablo 2, Baldur's Gate 2, Deus Ex and The Sims helped to keep the PC well on top. It was an expensive habit to run a decent gaming PC in the early part of the decade.
Morrowind, Doom 3, Half-Life 2, these were games that brought millions of desktop PCs to their knees with vertigo-inducing system requirements. And in the case of Half-Life 2, a digital distribution platform was introduced in the form of Steam. You had to install Steam and register your copy of Half-Life 2 online before being able to play, which annoyed many a gamer.
While the hardcore tweaked their water cooling systems, the humble Game Boy was getting an upgrade of its own. The Game Boy Advance hit the scene in 2001 and enjoyed a few years of love with gems like Advance Wars and WarioWare, Mega Micro Games, before the revolutionary Nintendo DS came a-knocking in 2004. Titles like Brain Training and Nintendog started to appeal to people outside of the typical gaming sphere. Soon, mums and dads were tapping out Sudoku and taking the advice of Olivia Newton-John that the DS was a system for everybody, not just gaming nerds. Nintendo were clearly onto something.
All right, Hex, let's get through the second half of the decade before that stupid monkey comes back.
If the first half of the noughties were all about the hardware, the second half has been all about accessibility, about opening the dark doors of gaming to the unwashed masses. The rise of affordable broadband made it easier than ever for gamers to keep in touch, and game developers were quick to jump on the bandwagon. The most obvious result of this increased connectivity was the huge growth of MMO games, with one standing head, shoulders and tubby little paunch above all the others. It is, of course, World of Warcraft, Blizzard's ludicrously popular fantasy MMO. Although it launched in 2004, its impact on the second half of the noughties is clear, and with over 10 million registered subscribers, nothing else even comes close. Not that that stopped the devs from trying.
2005 saw the launch of the Xbox 360. With games like Call of Duty 2, cameo elements of Power, and Peter Jackson's King Kong, the console took full advantage of its head start over Sony and Nintendo.
The PS3 didn't launch until a year later, but Sony more than made up for its lost time with a press conference that launched 1,000 memes.
So here's this giant enemy crab.
It's Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer!
And you attack its weak point for massive damage.
Sony and Microsoft pushed hard for the console exclusives to get the edge in their competition. On the face of it, the 360 has been winning the race with titles like Crackdown, the record-breaking Halo 3, Mass Effect and Gears of War. The Live Arcade has also played host to some of this generation's most entertaining original games, from Braid to Shadow Complex and Splosion Man, proving that smaller studios and bedroom coders can still mix it up with the bigger boys.
The PS3 wasn't far behind though. A year younger than the 360, it scored maybe 30 fewer exclusives, but they were arguably of a higher quality. Metal Gear Solid 4, Uncharted 1 and 2, Valkyria Chronicles, Infamous, Little Big Planet, the list goes on.
An unexpected side effect of the exclusives war was gamers buying multiple consoles. Nintendo was unfazed, but Sony and Microsoft needed a new point of difference stat. Microsoft's solution? Gamer points. A horrifyingly addictive take on the loyalty card. Putting gaming performance in the public domain created a powerful mixture of reward and shame, forcing gamers to go that extra mile for those elusive points. Online multiplayer has been around for decades, but it's a huge presence in gaming these days. Games like Gears of War, Borderlands and Left 4 Dead make the cooperative aspect the main focus of gameplay. It's not vital. You can play on your own with some AI, but it's a greatly reduced experience.
Ah yes, experience. Another buzzword for the late noughties. For Nintendo, the focus was on the pure fun experience, from waggling the Wiimote through an epic game of tennis to playing party games. The emphasis has been on good, clean, casual fun for the whole family the whole way. And while hardcore gamers may scoff at the content, the numbers speak for themselves, with the Wii selling 20 million more units than the 360, its closest competitor.
It's not just casual, though, as the Wii brought us Mad World, one of the most over-the-top, violent games of the decade. Thanks to the platform's family-friendly image and the stylized violence, the game snuck straight under the censor's radar, and Ninty fans were free to hack and slash their way through hordes of black and white baddies. No More Heroes, Scarface and The Godfather also helped to flesh out a small but promising mature gamer experience for Nintendo's funny little console.
Sony and Microsoft took a completely different track, choosing to focus on authentic Hollywood experiences, bigger, louder games that mirror their movie brethren, from Uncharted 2 to the trashy pulp approach of Wet. It's an approach that works, it seems, and who could have predicted a computer game outselling the decade's biggest box office hits? Halo 3 did it, GTA 4 did it, Assassin's Creed 2 did it, and Modern Warfare 2 most certainly did it.
Unfortunately, as the production costs rise, savings needed to be made in other areas to maximise the profit margin. Sometimes this has disastrous results. Microsoft's cost cutting during the initial production of Xbox 360s resulted in a console that's extremely vulnerable to console-killing errors, which most of our viewers will know as the Red Ring of Death.
So that brings us just about up to date, and whilst it's difficult for us to predict exactly what's coming next, what is clear is that gaming is here to stay, it's only getting bigger, and has forever changed the way we choose to entertain ourselves.
Really going forward, it's the dynamic interaction, and we've really got to think about the creative blend. You know, I want it to be cool. Okay? Did you get on that? You know, I really want us to go forward and unlock this achievement together.